Hello, 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 and welcome to yet another episode of the Conversation Capital. My name is Ursula Mariani, the host of the Conversation Capital, and I'm with the voice of reason, Ubonga Bueta Onjani sis.
I'm good. How are you?
I am awesome, thank you. Given, are you joining us?
I'm right here.
Awesome. So you guys talk and we listen. One of the, key things that have been coming up that you guys really want us to elaborate more on and rehash on is just workplace topics, things around public speaking, things around navigating toxic workplaces. So we've seen the numbers and we've seen that our audience is really engaging with, just being in a workplace and what that means, how to develop my career, how to advance this and that. And so we're saying, you know what, guys, we are Opdai. We have invited somebody very special. We have invited somebody who's going to walk us through being ready for the workplace. Oloti Machine, hello.
Hi, Ursula.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for coming through. You know, when I heard that you were coming through from Porchestroom,
imagine.
I said, wow, we were. But thank you. Thank you for honoring the podcast. Thank you for honoring the audience, and just giving your time and sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, happy to be here.
Awesome.
Looking forward to the conversation.
Sure, this is great. So who's Oloti Machine?
Oh, where do I even start? Maybe let's start with my background. So my background is in industrial psychology. So I studied in 2017, 18. I made a pivot because I was initially doing my BSc in physiology and psychology. I hit a career dilemma, realizing that I don't think I'm mentally strong enough to be a clinical psychologist, but also I didn't really enjoy the physiology part of my BSc. So I pivoted to industrial psychology, and that's where I found my flow. I completely enjoyed the work, especially because it really covered the elements of development, and it spoke to the people, and which is one of the things that I'm quite passionate about, is working with people. I find myself, I'm a bit of a nurturer, so for me to have pivoted within HR and go within the early career space, it came so naturally to me. Yeah. So that's who I am in a nutshell. My background in terms of work experience, I started off within the mining space, initially as a graduate myself in a graduate development program. And then thereon afterwards, when I got absorbed into the organization, I then had the opportunity to manage the early career space within that business unit. So that's basically how I got into early careers to begin with.
Yeah, so now this is obviously, we're inviting you on as somebody who's going to chat about early career development and early career readiness, being ready for the workspace and things like that. So I want to navigate into how did you get there? You've explained it briefly, but how do you get there? What was it you were doing initially where you found yourself, okay, this is actually the positioning I want to be in?
Yeah. So I could say that for the longest time, even whilst I was in university, I started creating content. The content creation, I think, came about when I felt like when I was in university, I had a bit of like mental, I would say, depression quite a lot. And I came across a lady called Marie Folio. I absolutely loved the content. I consumed it. It sort of helped me from, sort of trying to work myself through this, right? And then I got to get exposed to people like the Brendan Bouchard, who is a performance coach. I was like, this is really interesting. At that time, surprisingly, I was still doing my BSc, but I wanted to figure out how can I still take a major, which is a psychology, and pivot within the industrial psychology space. So I started creating content such as CV writing and stuff, because that's when I was actually looking for a job myself. So I started equipping myself with that, attending career centers, making sure that, when they've got training and sessions going on, I'm there, I'm learning how to prepare for interviews and stuff. So I take all that learning from my studies through the industrial psych area, and then as well through just researching sort of to equip myself. And I started teaching other people that through content. So when I then became a graduate, I struggled a lot in terms of, socializing myself within that corporate space, just learning how to navigate, how to develop myself and to manage my career accordingly. So some of those struggles, I wanted to make sure that, I've had the opportunity to sort of correct some of the things that I felt were lacking in the formal graduate program. So I had that chance to then pivot It was a passion of mine as a previous graduate, but I also loved working with young people. I find them to be easier to work with. They're more humble, they're more malleable, they're more willing to learn and to develop and to be coached. So that's how I sort of made my transition from, I would say, an HR generalist to more specialized talent management, and then obviously the early talent side of things.
Thanks for walking us through your journey. Now you've told us about your journey. Now let's reap
the
rewards. Let our audience reap the rewards of the work you've put into preparing people for the workspace. What does it mean to be workspace ready? What is it? What explain the concept of being
work readiness?
Work readiness.
Yeah. So I think there's many ways to look at it, but the best way I could describe it is looking at the knowledge, the skills, and the attributes that make you successful within the working environment, right? So there's an array of different things you can cover. Being work ready, if we look from a student perspective, it is to know how to navigate the job searching journey. How does that actually look like? Where do you start as a student who is in university? Do you know that you need to build a career profile? Are you building up your CV whilst you're studying? Are you building a network inside the university as well as outside externally? So it starts with, from a student perspective, building your career profile, being intentional with that. And then it starts to when you actually have the opportunity to go, whether in a formal graduate program and internship or an entry-level position, you are then intentionally building your career as you go. So there's different facets. I don't know where you would like me to touch, but there's different areas of work readiness in terms of how you can navigate your career accordingly.
No, let's go through all the facets. Somebody's sitting, somebody's watching, saying, I want to apply. What are top skills that I'm in varsity right now?
Yeah.
Should I invest in knowing Excel? Should I invest in knowing PowerPoint presentation? Should I invest in my ability to public speak? You know, so somebody who's preparing candidates, speak to how do you gear yourself that when you are learning BSc environmental science, you know, you can get so caught up in a tree blossoms in September, or I don't know what you guys learn in environmental science. You know, you can get so caught up in that you actually miss some of the other integral things that an employee could be looking for. So let's start there.
Okay, so I would definitely touch on the element, because a lot of people think that you need to be technically competent. And remember, in university, what you're really building up is your knowledge base. It's not technical competencies, because you haven't had the opportunity to apply it practically in a working environment. So we don't expect graduates to know everything. Yes, we want the degree, we want the university qualification, but the technical skills we will develop you, whether in your program, whether in your internship, learnership, whatever you find as an entry-level position after university. So technical competency is not a problem. I would say the things that are more essential are the softer skills. So the softer skills could look like, for example, communication. Are you a communicator? Do you know how to collaborate with people? Outside of your academics, are you actually the kind of student who puts themselves out there? Are you involved in extracurricular activities? Because those are the opportunities that are going to help you build up that collaboration skill set and being a team player. So I would definitely touch on the communication element. I'd touch on the people side as well. Your social processing skills, your emotional intelligence. I mean, these are the things that we're able to sort of pick up, not just through the psychometric assessments we would do through graduate recruitment, but also through the way in which we actually assess these graduates in, I would say, a formal setting such as assessment center. So it's also things like learning agility. I mean, learning potential is quite important for young people. If you're going to enter into a graduate program, learning potential is very important. That's why we look at the academics. We want graduates that have high mental processing ability, the kind of graduates that are going to be able to rotate in different stints, picking up skill sets very quickly, being able to work in a new team spontaneously as you go through the different rotations, being able to work with new people. So that level of agility is extremely important for graduates so that they are successful when they enter the working environment. The working environment is very complex, right? And we need people who are adaptable. So those are one of the key things we also look into. I would say the other element which would also be essential, depending on what the actual strategy in actually devising the graduate program. Most graduate development programs, when they are created, there's an intention why we want young emerging talent into the organization. So this could look like a variety of ways. Maybe we want to build the talent pipeline, or there's key business critical skill sets that we want to actually fulfill, and we're using the graduates as a talent feeder into the organization. Now, a lot of the programs also are looking for future leaders. So leadership potential is also important. So we want to know, can you actually lead people? Have you been in a position of responsibility or authority, like being an SRC? Maybe you were doing sports and you were the captain. Because when you get into the program, you get into the organization, we already consider you as talent. So we're going to groom you accordingly, even after the graduate program, so that you can occupy those senior roles. It's more of like a leadership acceleration program. So I would say the things that I've spoken to, from a student who's looking to getting into an organization, those would be the key things that they would need to work on.
And then on the side now of, you're looking at it from an HR perspective, trying to find the correct individual. What are some of the things that you can, to prepare on the side of an employee, the boss, looking at? What are some of the skills that they're looking for?
The boss itself.
Yeah. So as an HR person, you're looking for the perfect fit for this job role.
Yes.
But what are some of the things that you've noticed are more related to somebody's ability to work well in a team, or like you're saying, with regards to like things like Excel and whatever, what are some of the things that you would say outside of HR responsibility that individuals usually look for, that you've noticed to say, this isn't really in the scope,
okay,
but this is what, they like to see?
I'll be very honest with you. Working with hiring managers, a lot of the times we usually work with the heads of disciplines.
Sorry, thank you. That was the term I was looking for. I said bosses, but I was looking for the word hiring managers.
Yeah. So you would find that when we do interview these graduates, we focus more on the softer skills, right? We're looking at the behavioral competencies and we're asking our questions accordingly like that. They really try to test the technical competency side.
Okay.
And they love using scenarios in which they actually want to see how would you solve a certain problem, or they would ask you technical questions even off the cuff, so they might not be on the actual interview scorecard that we have in front of us, but they really focus on, do you actually sort of understand what mechanical engineering is? Do you understand what civil engineering is? And they do ask these technical questions. So I think from their part, they really focus on the problem solving. They really focus on the creative side, where they would sort of ask the graduate, how would you solve XYZ problem? And that's why I feel like it's also important for graduates to also do VAC work or work exposure programs, because that's where they have the only opportunity where they have to actually go into the corporate space whilst a student actually start applying some of the theoretical knowledge that they've learned at school in a working environment. Yeah.
If you can talk to us about using platforms such as LinkedIn, how often do you say, we're looking for somebody, let me go check out on LinkedIn? Do those things really work?
They do.
We found you on LinkedIn.
Yes. I'm a LinkedIn active user, 100%.
No, I absolutely agree. But if you could just expand with us, what does it practically look like to be using LinkedIn as a platform for one to find jobs, for one to look for individuals? If you could just expand on that.
And just to add on to that, because I've seen a few students as someone in school, because with us professionals, you would post like your daily life, or I've came across this. So as an entrant, maybe you're in varsity or honors year, you're building a profile so that companies can look at you.
What are you sharing? In the library, working hard on my biometrics module.
We call them LinkedIn influencers these days. And you find a lot of our generation Z that are very active on social media, going onto LinkedIn. I would say the first thing you would need to do, number one, be active. Actually be active on the platform. I found that they say that about 1%, there's only 1% of people who use LinkedIn are actually active and post once a week. So it means, number one, making sure that...
You know what?
Yeah.
Just pausing right there. I like the numbers you're giving.
Yeah.
Because people say things like be active. What does be active mean? We're talking posting once a week.
Yeah,
Thank
that could be one of the things. The second thing I'd say, optimize your profile. So there's a creator mode on LinkedIn where it sort of gives you a couple of like almost like a checklist in terms of, what you need to have, like a picture that's got a nice plain background where we can see your face, making sure your job title as well. So I'm finding that the trend now on LinkedIn is you no longer just put your job title. Let's say I work for this company. Let's say I'm a early talent officer working for Anglo American. No, what you actually write on your job title on LinkedIn is what value do you bring? Because someone else might not know what an early talent officer is. So for example, for me, I say I transform ambitious graduates into high performing professionals, which speaks to my actual role or what I do as a career. So graduates, I would actually advise them to actually talk about what are they looking for. So I'm a graduate, or I'm a mining engineering graduate looking for entry-level positions within the mining space or something like that. So that should be on their job profile, not to say that mining engineering graduate alone. So they must actually talk about what are you actually looking for, because that's the first thing I see when I'm viewing a profile. Having a good summary on the LinkedIn part, making sure you put in your education. Sometimes you can even attach your CV, but you have to be a bit careful in terms of putting something like your ID number, even your contact number. I would probably put in just my email address. It also means building a connection base. So reaching out to graduate recruiters on LinkedIn, having them as connections, and not just allowing the relationship just to sit on the platform. DM these graduate recruiters, because they usually go to these career fairs in university. Make it a point to actually meet up with them. A lot of the issue with graduates is that when they apply for roles or jobs, they put in a faceless CV. That will get lost in the ATS and all these other things. What you want to do when you apply for a job, know who is the person who's receiving that CV so that they can look out for your CV out of all the tens and thousands of job applications that come through. So LinkedIn is definitely a great opportunity for that. Putting on your job alerts, making sure that they're active. So when you get job alerts, you sort of categorize it in terms of what kind of roles you're looking for. Big, large organization post all their jobs on LinkedIn. I think that would be the first place I would look in terms of job sites. Definitely LinkedIn, because that's where they also advertise. Yeah.
Then if you could walk us through, I've got the job now.
Okay.
I've used LinkedIn. I'm in the space. How do I demonstrate myself as a valuable candidate in this space?
Using the platform.
No.
Oh, outside of LinkedIn.
Just keep us there at work. Is it
Okay.
the way I dress? Is it the way I talk? Is it the way my email jargon? Kind regards, best regards. Like, what is it? What is it that says, okay, we've hired the right person? I think she wants to add on to.
Before that, I want to speak to, does social media behavior matter? Because LinkedIn is a social media platform. So let's say, my LinkedIn is great. Yeah. But maybe does social media behavior matter?
I always use the mom rule, meaning that if your mom were to see your post, how would she feel about it?
My mom.
Yes. So let me tell you, we graduate recruiters are very nosy. We'll go on your Instagram, we'll go.
Why y'all trying to be my mom?
So is it appropriate? Is it like, are you posting pictures of just, those people post pictures of alcohol in the bathtub and stuff like that? So just be a little bit careful in terms of what are you putting it out there in the universe. So in terms of LinkedIn itself, or let's say, for example, I'm just going back to your question in terms of working for the first time and just understanding what can you do to actually stand out. I think it's a sentiment that stays with a lot of graduates and emerging professionals. They want to go into an organization and they want to make a direct impact. They want to be involved in the big, large, strategic, high impact projects. They want to be invited in the rooms. And I always say, slow down. As a graduate, for you to create impact, you need to first have mastery. You need to first focus on building up your technical skill stack, which is a lot of the times the process in which people actually miss, because they want to do impact, but you can't do impact if you're not competent, right? So I always say focus on your technical skill stack, building up your mastery. Now, how does that look like for someone who is working for the first time? It's building up your technical capabilities. So as a graduate or even an internship program or a learnership program, the first thing you ask for from your early talent team or from your HR is, do you guys have a structured development plan for me? Do you have some type of a technical learning journey? Because that's going to be the Bible that you're going to use. That's going to be your guide that's going to speak to, okay, if I'm in this program, 2-3 years time, I need to exit the program. What profession am I going to be? What was the purpose of us having HR professionals within this graduate program? Was it to groom specialists? Was it to groom generalists? Your technical development program will speak to that. It will also speak to the type of role rotations that you're going to work under. It's going to speak to the type of line managers you're going to work under, because as you go in different teams, you're learning different skill sets, you're getting different work exposures. So I would say focus on technical skill, because as you increase your competence, you also increase your confidence as well.
As someone in HR, I can speak to that. I can agree with you so strongly, because my program, there was a checklist. I actually didn't know what it meant to have my degree until that program. You need to know onboarding, you need to know talent, you need to know this function, you need to know that function. And when you are in interviews with people, you want someone to use the correct vocabulary. And the only way someone can show that is by having the technical capabilities that you're speaking about, if I have done my job. And there's this tendency of organizations where someone becomes so good in a particular thing that they don't get to rotate.
They want them to stay there. And graduates also become comfortable because now they know the people there, right? I'm comfortable with my colleagues. I'm comfortable with the work. That's when I say that you need to actually challenge yourself. Get out of your comfort zone. The minute you stay too long, you are not growing anymore. So I always say with graduates, I look at different areas where you're doing familiar work in a familiar environment. Learn what you need to learn, move on. The second part is you are doing familiar work in an unfamiliar environment. You need to learn how to engage with different stakeholders within the business and actually build relations in terms of understanding how do you manage the stakeholders in this environment, even though you do know the work. The other one could be unfamiliar work, unfamiliar environment. That's literally you out of, fish out of water. And that is also good because it means that you need to lean further on your job resources. So getting support from colleagues who are more seasoned, who are more experienced, because that's where the coaching is going to come from. You're going to need coaching. You're going to need continuous feedback so that you are iterative in terms of how you are navigating certain work tasks. So I would definitely speak to that. So it's sort of not making sure that you are able to learn and to accelerate your learning. Do not stay stagnant. The quicker you build your skill set, the better for you to get absorbed into the organization in certain roles.
In South Africa, our land, you know what happens? There's no jobs. Speak to navigating failures and rejection, because the truth is people get rejected more than they get accepted for jobs. And it can be quite a daunting experience. If you could just walk us through that, what would you say to an early graduate to say you're gonna fail more than you pass, and this is how you navigate the failures?
So would that be failure with regards to
applying for jobs and not getting them? So rejection, I think failure is not the right word. Rejection, job application. We regret to inform you. I said, have you ever gotten we regret? I have.
It really does something to the mindset, hey?
It does.
Yeah, especially with mental health. I can see how that can really affect a person. because you think, Ayman, is there something wrong with me? Am I not good enough? You know, you know, especially if you actually look at the current market, where you're finding for, let's say, a formal graduate program, and there are not a lot of them. Let me be very, there are not a lot of them. You'll find that there'll be 20,000 job applications from graduates, and they're only taking 20 people. So that's 0.01% people actually become successful for those roles. The best way to approach it is, I always say, resilience. As well as some level of grit. It's a job to find a job. And the sooner you start, the better. I sometimes hear graduates go like, I've applied for 20 roles, I haven't got an interview. I'm like, I got my first job after the 78th job application. What are you talking about?
So you're joking?
I'm not joking. I was very intentional in terms of how I started my career journey as a graduate. I made sure that I was active. I was even a comrade at some point with Sasko. I was starting gospel. I was active on campus. So it really means that you...
And can I just say that attention to detail is so important. I look at some of the requests we get for people to be on the podcast, and they're using another podcast name.
Yes.
It's like, I'm definitely not reading
not
the rest
your
of this
first
email
choice.
because this is not the platform you're looking for.
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying, that these things become they quickly eliminate you. Just that small attention to detail. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, definitely. So a strategy is important, even with job hunting. There needs to be a strategy. Do you have a tracker to track to sort of track the jobs that you've applied for? I've had graduates apply for roles. You call them for a telephonic interview, like, I never applied for this job, because they don't know, because they don't have a tracker. They're applying for everything in different sites. They have no idea what roles that they have actually applied for. So to have a tracker in place, and to have a strategy in place to go like, okay, what kind of organizations do I want to work with? What are my values? What am I actually trying to get out of this particular role? Do I want to be a generalist, an HR generalist? Okay, what companies actually offer graduate programs for HR graduates? So it's being intentional in terms of your values, making sure they actually align with the values of the companies that you're actually applying for, because it really speaks to the culture of that organization. Will you be able to fit in, right? It's also being intentional in terms of, even when it comes to getting a rejection, right? A lot of graduates, when they get that rejection, let's say they went through the interview phase of the whole recruitment process, and they still get rejected. I always say, ask for feedback. Ask for interview feedback. Don't just see the email and go like, I'll just apply for another one. No, ask for feedback. Talk to the recruiter, talk to the hiring manager. Can you give me feedback in terms of, what did I do right? What is still missing? Where are the areas or the points of improvement? Because so I can better equip myself when I apply for other roles. So, I think those would be the key things.
I think that feedback, you're right, that feedback is important. And what that feedback does, it says that you're not stupid.
Yeah.
It was just a certain little element that you didn't reach, you didn't meet, or another candidate had something, a one up on you. That feedback is important, because you can always make up things. Maybe I spoke too fast. Maybe I this, maybe I that.
Maybe I was too nervous.
And you start making up things in your head and really just getting the facts as to why did I not get this post, I think can be quite... What you're not speaking to, which I'm hoping you will, is around, like I said, you're walking into the workspace, the practicalities of, because I remember I always refer to that interview book where the guy says ultimately people want to work with somebody that's positive. You don't want to work with a Debbie Downer, and he speaks to really just being, don't be the gossip, just be somebody that's pleasant to work with. I think of things like dress code. I think of so if you could speak towards those really basic things that if you could indulge us to say these are some of the things that make you a pleasant person to work with.
I definitely love that, the attitude part, that can do positive attitude. So again, I think it speaks to resilience. It speaks to grit as well, because you don't want, and I can understand how difficult sometimes for graduates, because they've never worked before. This is their first job. This is their first being, in a sort of like a professional setting, and they're also trying to navigate that themselves, right? It can be quite difficult for them. I think the the key things I think people don't really speak to is business acumen. And what that actually means, it's almost like a street smart insight in understanding how the business works, how it makes its money, but also the market forces that drive its strategy. Now, why this is important for graduates, and I think a lot of the times they think that it's not something, do I have to really know what happens here? Yes, you do, because what happens in the organization has a direct impact in terms of the work that you do, right? So business acumen, I would say, also speaks to KPIs and performance management, right? So those key performance indicators are tied somehow to the strategy of the organization. Your department, your team has certain KPIs that they need to meet. And based on those KPIs, it will determine if they were successful in terms of how they approached that particular working year. So I would say for a graduate to sort of be someone who's ambitious, I always ask, what is that one headache or that one KPI that sort of gives your line manager sleepless nights? What is that irritant? Because that is the thing that you want to be aligned with. You want to be aligned with work that gives you the greatest visibility. So I always say, looking at the biggest KPI and making sure, how can I be a part of that project? How can, even if I'm just maybe doing notes for now and stuff like that, I'm opening myself up for work and opportunities. I'm opening myself up for visibility, not just to my colleagues, but also to senior leaders, because this is the KPI that is the main driver for that division. So definitely business acumen. It's also understanding that you're accountable. A lot of graduates forget that they're accountable to the employer. You're no longer a student, meaning time management. Get to work on time. If you set up a meeting, make sure that you attend the meeting. Make sure you prepare for the meeting.
Have you guys seen this meme of Woody from Buzz Lightyear walking out of a box, like dancing, and then the caption reads, he looks very like, I don't care, I'm at work. Like he has a very, I don't know, like the dance itself has an attitude about it. And then the caption says, me walking in at the office knowing that everyone else is incompetent. Actually walking in late at the office knowing that everyone else they have is incompetent.
So I have this leeway.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like the time management element, accountability, meaning that your KPIs, if you don't perform, you get fired. Okay, if you're working for someone will always have that level of control in terms of if you're being hired, if you're being promoted, if you're being fired. So knowing that there's a certain expectation, psychological contract, which is basically what the employer expects of the employee and what the employee thinks is expected of them, making sure those are aligned. It will sort of help you ensure that you're always on track, your KPIs are being met, and you're performing at level. The last thing you want to do is for line managers and managers to complain about your performance, because that in itself comes with its own HR processes. You don't want to be put in a performance improvement plan or program. So I would say that would be one of the key things in terms of just a graduate thriving within that working environment. I would also speak to also building a learning mindset. Understanding that even though you're there, you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay. People expect that from you. You're still a young, emerging professional, and you need to use the resources and the people around you to develop yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? It's also speaking to the fact that are you actually developing yourself? If there's training that's taking place, are you part of those sessions? Are you making sure that you're hitting all your development milestones in the program? Because that's also going to speak to how quickly you learn, how quickly you adapt, and how quickly you're able to pick up work and pick up those technical skills that are going to make you competent. Because what you want to do is master, because that's where you can actually provide value if you actually know what you're doing. So you want to be a master as quickly as possible whilst you're in the program.
I want to go back to the thing you were saying about be excellent, get like the best marks.
Yeah.
I have a little issue with that, hey? And I say it because, for one, South Africa right now, which was a very big debate in the past few weeks, of the 30% pass mark, which already sort of conditions, I'm just curious on your opinion on it, conditions a lot of young South Africans to not aim for like the 80 and the 90s, right? And also, I think the crux of my question lies here. Does, in terms of work competence, right, does the 80%er actually put in more work and bring in more than the 50%er, right? And I ask that knowing that, or rather understanding the fact that different industries the impact of being the person who's a straight A student, it would have different impacts depending on the industry. So for example, I've noticed a lot of work in the IT space, information technology, so coding, being a developer, software developer, cybersecurity, etc. They've increased focus more on the technical skill rather than on how are you a straight A, right? And then I noticed that in industries like being a lawyer, they focus more on your how well you can in terms of being a straight A, or let me say maybe they focus more on your intellectual ability, right? But I do wonder, like, does it really, and is it something that is being considered that the work we're looking for this person for is actually not work that requires them to be a straight A student?
Okay, I would say it depends on, like you said, it might be industry specific. It's role specific as well. Now, the reason why I would say in a formal graduate development program, why learning potential is very important, because learning potential speaks to mental processing ability. Ne? And what that basically means is that, are you able, if I'm giving you information, I'm teaching you something, how quickly do you grasp that? How quickly are you able to grasp that information and then be able to apply it practically? So I would say it's dependent on what kind of role are you actually looking for. In graduate programs, we want the 70s, we want the 80s, but not just that. We focus on other areas that makes a candidate more holistic, right? We look at the softer skills, the people skills.
Is it a deal breaker?
Well, if you don't get 65%, bye-bye. Because at some point we have to have a benchmark.
The number of people that
we have to have a benchmark. Yeah, that's what
65% is not bad, ne?
It's not bad.
Yeah, I'm literally just thinking in context of South Africa right now. Like just the thing, I don't know if it does affect, maybe some magic happens where you focus on the 35s in high school, the 35%, obviously in whatever subjects that you choose to. And then you figure varsity value and you're like, Azin, I'm no longer a 35%er. Now I'm a 65%er. I find it hard to see that jump happen without some kind of conditioning happening in between.
But remember, given also the person who goes to university likely made a particular APS. So it's not the person.
You can start with a diploma, ukupu, and work your way to a BTech. So technically, you were there, but you've worked your way to an equivalent from someone who was at...
But even with the diploma, there is particular benchmarks, and it's not as low as...
But I hear what Given is saying in
the sense
I understand that if you go the TVET route,
basically, yes.
But
F6,
but towards to always his point, something. For example, I work in a space that wants the TVET graduate. We are not looking for those things. That's why you will be in a plant or you will have a practical assessment. That's why always says it is role specific and industry specific. Because when I'm looking for example, let's example the easiest one, an artisan. I am not looking for those particular things. I want you to be in the workshop. You know, that's why also in some we've touched on this before. In some recruitment strategies, they use gamifications where it's not going to be the APS that matters, but as she's speaking to high impact or high. I'm struggling to articulate this, but in the graduate programs that she's alluding to, it will be your 75 because it's a development program for a leadership role. That's why the aspect of a role specific and industry specific comes in.
I mean, like a quick example would be like you're looking for the next candidate
CEO,
attorney,
CFO.
or the next
Yes.
candidate attorney is at some big law firm.
Yes.
You want the distinction candidates. You want the ones that didn't pass law gadi 50. You know, you want the individuals that are going to come in and punching really quickly. I want to speak to a social element to being in a professional space. You're in varsity. When you are president of the SRC, you guys go out drinking. It has no impact on you being SRC president. Even if they take pictures of you holding a bottle of Savannah or whatever have you. We're now speaking outside of social media. We've discussed social media. We're talking about at work, Friday after work drinks, starting romantic relationships. Speak to this element of, you know, being a new graduate, and, you know, you've still got that little bit of varsity vibe to you, where after work drinks sounds like a good idea. But I think you quickly learn that it's not, you know, and these things can affect your professional growth. And so if you could speak to that element of being an early career individual.
I think the people element is very interesting, especially if you really think about, you know, how do you actually build relations within the working environment, professional relationships. I always say that with graduates, they need to figure out in terms of how do you actually build your own career advisory board. And that actually includes the facets of different people with different functions in terms of how they're supporting you with your career. So I always say that, number one, always have a role model. Meaning that what is or who is that inspirational figure? They don't have to be someone you work with, but they can be someone within your niche, someone within your field that you aspire to be. Who do you want to look like when you're at the pinnacle of your actual career? So that's going to be the kind of person that's going to motivate you, even when things are quite hard at work. Because let's say you listen to their podcasts, you read their books, and you're trying to align yourself with that type of a person. You're actually using their actual blueprint. The second person is, I feel like the most important part is having a mentor as well, because having a mentor within the working environment really does wonders for your career. This is, you know, a person who is there to sort of support you in terms of your goals. They are also your sounding board as well. They give you good advice. For a graduate, I always say that be a bit more strategic in terms of which person has the ability to sort of give me and mentor me in terms of the skill sets that I want to build. So let's say I'm an HR graduate, and I know that when I exit the program, I'm going to be an HR officer, right? The mentor that I want is not an HR officer. It's the person that manages the HR officer. Because that HRBP has insight in terms of what does a high-performing HR officer looks like. So they can actually mentor you accordingly. A sponsor is also important. So this is a person who is in a senior leadership role within the organization, right? They are your lobbyists. So they're the kind of people that are going to pound the table for you behind closed doors. They're the ones that are going to give you opportunities. They're going to open up their circle, their social network circle, whether internally, externally in the organization. But they're the ones that provide opportunities and get you in rooms you would have never seen yourself in. And then another person is a coach, and your coach is usually your line manager, because your coach is actually supporting you, but also they're helping to build your technical skills through the work, but also coaching you along the way. So all your short-term career goals, you're working with your line manager to achieve them. So you don't just have the responsibility of meeting your KPIs. They have the responsibility to be a coach to you, to provide you that coaching as a line manager. So by the time you leave his or her team, you are competent, you are confident in terms of mastering that element of your work. So I would say focus on those 4 people, but also build a network with other graduates also in the organization. A lot of the graduates think that, okay, I just need to know the important people. I don't need to build relationships with these other graduates. They're actually my competition. I see they become very competitive when they enter these graduate programs. And you need to realize they're going to be your colleagues. As you climb the ladder, they're climbing the ladder with you. As you leave the organization, you want to have context within different spaces and different organizations, because that's going to do wonders for your actual career when you have that strong professional network. Yeah.
And then I've seen the work of sponsors, ne? And then there are contexts where your sponsor is not told to you. There are contexts where like they'll say this person is your sponsor, like so and so who is a particular level in the workplace is your sponsor. They'll give you your sponsor. In contexts where your sponsor is not given to you, how do you firstly identify? Okay, identifying is quite simple because someone's senior, but then please also go into how do you approach someone?
It's like I said, it's that same question of like asking a person to be their mentor, right? For me, what I find that what actually works is organic relationships. I find it a little bit cringe, I'm not going to lie, when someone you've never spoken to, someone you don't even know their potential, you don't even know their work ethic, and they come, they're like, oh, Lottie, can you please be my mentor? Because that is a huge ask from the mentor's part, right? So I always talk about rather build mentoring relationships, which is organic. So instead of asking for someone to be your mentor or your sponsor, ask them, you know what, I look up to you in terms of your work. There's certain things I really want to build, but can I actually just have a 30-minute conversation with you? There are certain things that I would like to ask you and like to pick your brain on, right? The commitment is not a lot. I'm sure someone can have, like, let's have coffee downstairs. I want to speak to you about X, Y, and Z, right? And then see if there's rapport, right? Because you also want rapport. You don't want, whether it's a mentor or sponsor, you want someone whom you can have some level of rapport with. It comes naturally. So that when you guys build on that relationship, it's easier because it makes sense, right? So I always say coffee chats are great, especially within a corporate setting. The commitment is not there. You're going to pick up the energy from both sides. Is this someone that you actually want to learn from? Do you actually enjoy their company? Do they provide value? So in that 30 minutes, that coffee chat will sort of give you an indication. And maybe after that meeting, you go like, oh, can you sort of pick up on, this other conversation I want to talk about? And maybe put another 30 minutes or another coffee chat. And now you've seen, okay, this is actually a mentor. They're mentoring me. Remember, what you're asking from them is a lot. You're asking access to their networks, right? You're asking them to be there for you in terms of supporting you regarding your career, to be a voice of reason, to provide advice and so many things. So you want to make sure that you yourself have sort of figured out the relationship to say that actually this is someone I can actually lean on. But I feel like it has to be organic. Yeah. It has to be organic. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're so right. As you're saying it, I'm realizing that I've approached my mentors in the wrong way. And I'm sure a lot of us have, we just go for the jugular. Mentor, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
So, asking for a cup of coffee, pick your brain. These are really good skills and tips that you're giving us here. So we're rounding off, parting shot, new graduate, somebody looking for a graduate program. What are some of the things that maybe we didn't ask that you'd like to share with them?
Okay, so a graduate who is looking to apply for a graduate program. Okay, so it could, I always say, I think one of the key things is really speaking on the importance of intention, right? Being intentional in terms of what are you actually looking for, right? And what is the best avenue for me to actually be able to do that, because graduate programs are only great for certain types of graduates in terms of the career goal is X, Y, and Z. Sometimes going into an entry-level position it might be the best approach for you. So instead of going through an internship or graduate program, you go right into an entry-level position, and the learning is also there as well. So being intentional, I think, would be one of the key things in terms of what you're looking for. It is networking, building your network whilst you are in university. Universities have alumni programs where you can actually reach out to alumni who were part of your university, who are in different fields and industries. They can actually connect you with mentors like that. But a lot of people don't know because they don't go to the career centers. They don't inquire about such things. The best way to get your foot in is to have someone who's already on the other side of the door, right? So I always say, with the faceless job applications, they don't always work. know people from inside, do informational interviews with people who are already in the graduate program, in the learnership program, the internship program you want to be, because then you can also pick their brains in understanding how did you navigate this and that, you know, when it came to the interviews, how did you prep accordingly? So having those informational interviews, building your network is very fundamental. It's going to make it so much easier for you, because I've had many graduates reach out to me on LinkedIn. I've kept their contact. They see me at the career fair. They give me their CV. And when I'm looking at those 10,000 job applications, I'm looking for them as well, because I have them in the back of my mind. But if you're not visible, if no one knows who you are, you're going to be lost in the sea of the other 20, 30,000 job applications. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. You know, jokingly said in South Africa, but these are critical conversations because people are struggling. The competitive environment is really high. There's high youth unemployment in South Africa, really high, actually. High is not the word. You have to add the really so that we stress, you know. And so people are looking to how do I fare in such a competitive environment. So thank you. Thank you for sharing with us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Olotu Machine. That was today's episode of The Conversation Capital. So all the new graduates, make sure you forward this episode to them. And don't forget to also comment some of the tips that you have. If you've been in the workspace for a while and you're saying, hey man, I think this was missed out, then feel free to share that with us. Thank you though. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. For now though, goodbye and God bless.